not in Kansas anymore. We must be over the rainbow.
With that now legendary phrase, Judy Garland, Dorothy Gale, has introduced well over 1 billion movie and television viewers to the wonderful land of the Wizard of Oz. During her adventures in Oz, Dorothy meets some unforgettable companions and characters: the Scarecrow, Tin Woodman and Cowardly Lion, the Wicked Witch, the Winged Monkeys. But her first real friends, the ones who celebrated her and made her most immediately at home, even miles from Kansas, were the Munchkins. Now, more than 50 years after they first escorted Dorothy down the Yellow Brick Road, we'd like you to meet them too and share the memories and magic of the little people who live in this land. It's a special Ozzy invitation. We're off to see the Munchkins.
You'll be history, and we will glorify your name. You'll be a bus, in the Hall of Fame.
The active Oz Hall of Fame these days is pretty much a Munchkin establishment. They are the only surviving principal cast members of the 1939 MGM film, and whether one at a time or in groups like this one in Chesterton, Indiana, they're invited to join Oz festivals and make personal appearances all over the country, from Chittenango, New York to Liberal, Kansas. They may be older than they were in Oz, but their diminutive stature makes them more accessible to children than perhaps anyone else could be, whether in or out of replicas of their costumes. And with humor and joy, they take pride in recalling their specific Munchkin assignments in the film.
As coroner, I must aver, I thoroughly examined her, and she's not only merely dead, she's really most sincerely dead.
I was one of the Munchkin soldiers.
I'm a towns lady, I'm a dancing lady, I'm whatever they wanted.
My pal, this is Carl Slova. He was the trumpeter in the Munchkin Land sequence.
Right.
And he sings, "We're off to see the wizard." Would you like to hear it? We're off to see the wizard.
The wonderful Wizard of Oz. How you doing? You're fine. Is the Wizard of Oz, if ever a wizard was. If ever a wizard was, the Wizard of Oz is one because of the wonderful things he does. La 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 la. We're off to see the wizard, the wonderful Wizard of Oz.
Thank you. That's Carl.
I don't know how everybody got their part, but they just gave me to being a soldier.
Wake up, you sleepy head, rub your eyes, get out of bed. Wake up, the wicked witch is dead.
I was one of the townsmen.
We represent the Lollipop Guild, the Lollipop Guild, the Lollipop Guild, and in the name of the Lollipop Guild, we wish to welcome you to Munchkin Land. So that's what I did, and that's what was remembered by everybody rather than anything else.
It was author L. Frank Baum who started all of this with his book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, back in 1900. He described the Munchkins as not as big as the grown folks Dorothy had always been used to. The Munchkins make further appearances in some of the 39 other Oz books. They even turned up in the successful 1902 stage musical and in some early silent Oz films, always played by full-grown people. It wasn't until MGM decided to film The Wizard of Oz in 1938 that the call went out for real little people to fill the parts. There were at that time many hypopituitary dwarfs, perfectly scaled-down miniature people, active in show business. MGM contracted impresario Leo Singer, whose singer midgets were theatrically well known. He, in turn, subcontracted other vaudeville troupes, traveled the country, and spread the word that MGM needed little people for Oz. Some of those who answered the call were performing veterans. Some were new to the entertainment world. Most were required to sign with Singer for the privilege of working in the picture. And almost all of them had one thing in common.
I never heard about Wizard of Oz.
No, I wasn't aware of the Wizard of Oz books or Frank Baum or anybody, you know.
Never heard of the Wizard of Oz? never heard of the Oz books, and believe me, I didn't know what a munchkin was. But I do know now.
The first inkling of The Wizard of Oz was I got a letter in the mail with a train ticket. It says, come to California to make a movie.
Our so-called Midget Grapevine, the word came around the country that MGM was going to make a movie in which they would need a lot of little people.
A gentleman came out to the house, or called me or something, I remember, and come and got me and took me down there. And I never saw him after that, but he must have got some kind of a deal because they accepted me.
The agent called me. The picture was going on, and the agent called me, and he said, Mr. Singer's here. He would like to know if you'd like to be in the picture. And of course, I was so happy. I was thrilled.
I get a letter from this agent, Thelma Weiss, and asking if I'd like to come be in The Wizard of Oz, and I thought, wow.
They did an act called 3 Steps in 1/2. And we were playing the Bond Hotel in Hartford, Connecticut. I think it was Hartford, yes. And this gentleman seen me from the audience, and he came backstage after the show, and he said, say, you know, we're going to make a movie. We need about 5 little guys that could really sing and dance, and I know you can sing and dance because I seen the act. So he said, would you mind? I said, I'd be happy to. So 3 months later, believe it or not, there was a contract from Lowe's Incorporated.
MGM began principal photography of Oz in October 1938. The studio wanted the Munchkins in California by mid-November, and the little people started to arrive by car, by train. 28 of them came in a specially chartered promotional bus that traveled from Times Square in New York City all the way to Culver City in California. They arrived just in time for the Munchkins' first call on November 11th.
But then when we got to the hotel in Culver City, was the Culver City Hotel, and it was early in the morning, about 7 a.m. I heard a big band playing, da-da-da-da-dum. I turned over to the other 2 guys and said, hey, look, they're having a parade for us. Come on, look out the window. It's a big parade. They're welcoming us to Culver City. And after closer observation, I noticed it was Armistice Day. You know, Veterans Day. And I thought, oh, geez, I thought it was for us. No.
Me being only 15 years old, they picked like a chaperone or, you know, another little lady that had been in show business, and she was 33 years old, so she was older, and they picked her to stay with me as an overseer. And we stayed at the Culver City Hotel.
It was in walking distance, and we walked to work and walked home.
MGM's casting call for Munchkins couldn't have been more successful. It resulted in the largest group of little people ever assembled for a single project, a record that still stands. Naturally, the studio missed no opportunity to promote this coup, and as well wasted no time. Although several little people were still en route to Culver City, the Munchkins were put straight to work.
Well, we were in a big, huge room. You know, to me it looked like a big warehouse, you know. And they had chairs, like musical chairs, all sitting around, and they had the piano. And this fellow was the player, Mr. Becker, and and they gave us a script, and we would go through this script and sing, and not ad-lib, we'd do our regular singing. And then when we got that down good, then they picked out the ones that could dance. We went on another set, or should I say into another room. And the dance teacher was Donna Mason, and she would pick out the ones that could do the dance, and then the ones that couldn't, they kind of got in the background, you know. And we would learn our steps, and we'd go up to, you know, like they had those bleachers, and we'd have to learn how to go up and down them, so that when we went on to Munchkinland, that was all set for the movie, we'd know how to go up and down them without falling or whatever.
There was different instructors that gave different groups their own individual instructions on what they were to do. Of course, we all didn't do the same thing, so naturally they had different instructors.
I was also one of the soldiers, see, and they taught us how to make the steps for the soldiers, and also dance when we sang Ding Dong the Witches, Dead Witch or Witch, and all that. And so Donna Mason, she showed some of us how to do the steps, you know. She's real nice.
What I really wanted to do was to drive the horse, because I'd been into horses. I'd been tried to be a jockey and all that, and I'd been to Caliente, which is in Mexico, and so I knew how to ride and everything, and I knew how to handle horses. But then another guy got the job, so it was one of those things.
He wanted me to do the toe dance. He wanted me really bad, and I said, no, I'm not a very good toe dance. I could do it if I bent my knees. But I couldn't, but they bent their knees, but I didn't want to do it.
So after the choreography test, why, they said he'd be perfect for the lollipop guy. So get two guys his size. The fellow on my left was Harry Dahl, that was one of his names, and the fellow on my right was Jackie Gerlich. He was from the Ringling Brothers Circus.
The casting director naturally took a look at all of us, and the first ones who were decided on were the three Lullaby Lady girls, because they were the only three girls who had ever had toe dancing lessons. So that was their first pick. And of course the mayor, I think, was an automatic pick. And then the Lollipop fellows were picked up next, because they had three people all shoulder to shoulder. In other words, that seemed to be the principal interest there, although the ages varied considerably. One was 14 and one was 40. And then the casting director picked 8 of us fellows and lined us up. Each one of us said the lines for the Munchkin Coroner. And I think because I had been doing a bit of public speaking, just as you would know, I had learned to enunciate a little bit more distinctly. And he said, okay, you're the coroner. It took the costume department 5 weeks to make up all those costumes, during which time all the rehearsals were going on. In other words, the dance steps and the routine of working out who's going to be exactly where at what time. So that by the time the 5 weeks were over, when the costumes were ready, we had been, shall we say, thoroughly rehearsed, so that there was very little need for retakes after that.
Metro's renowned Adrian had begun sketching costumes for the Munchkins months before their arrival in California. He accessorized their outfits with oversized tassels, pompons, and ornamentation, all of which helped to underscore the petite stature of the little actors wearing the wardrobe.
The costume man, of course, measured every single Munchkin individually and designed a costume according to the part which he had been assigned.
We went into the wardrobe room, and they measured us for our costumes, and they measured us for the shoes and for the hat and whatever. And that my hat was like a flower pot hat. I always, everybody always asked me, how can I tell you when you're in the movie? And I said, look for the flower pot hat, the blue one.
We were all measured first, and then they just took out the names out of the file, and they knew what to make, because they had all your measurements there.
We had our shoes, and we had little flowers growing out our shoulders, and we had little pointed toe shoes. And every time anything would go wrong, they always had a hairdresser on the side. They had a wardrobe lady standing there. Everything was right, right to the T.
This is the original vest that I wore in the movie in 1938. You think I could get into it now?
Oh, we sat under lights, and they dressed us up as though we were stars. And so far as I'm concerned, we were stars.
Jack Dawn, the makeup man, took each of us and said, what are your lines, what are your parts, and then designed a makeup for you as shall we say, the master makeup. And then they took a still picture of that for their files, so that every time you came to work in the morning, when they were ready to shoot, they would pull that out of the file, and one of the assistant makeup men would do that makeup exactly like Jack Dawn had designed it.
We had I think it was an old rehearsal hall or an old underground stage, but it was below the regular stage, and it was a long, like a not a museum, a basketball court or something. That's what it looked like, and they had about 25 chairs, and every chair was designated, lollipop guys here, soldiers here, city folks there, and city hall people there, and because the same makeup man had to do us every day because so they wouldn't mix up the, you know, screw up the continuity of the script, you know. Make sure we had the same nose and ear and the same stupid flower pots in our head or whatever it was.
We would go into the makeup room and they would have chairs. We called them the musical chairs because we'd get in one chair and they had someone there to make our face up, you know, to start out, and then we'd get through with that, and then they'd go move us to another chair. So we had somebody to put our makeup on, then we had somebody to put our lips on, then we had somebody to make the eyebrows. In the meantime, they're putting curlers in our hair and rolling our hair up, and we kept, I guess we must have went through about 10 chairs. By the time we went all the way up and around, it was like a circle or a half moon or whatever. And then by the time we got to the end, we were all made up and our hair and everything was all done.
I guess what I remember most about the makeup was the skull caps, the latex skull caps, which they put on and then they would glue them down tight. And man, when you sweat on the top of your head, it'd run right down your neck, you know. So, but you got used to it after a while. And then they'd put makeup on that. And then there was another wig that came on top of that, you know.
We would go to the makeup department 7 o'clock in the morning and get out at 8. And they'd take a clear plastic cap and put on your head, you know, and they'd glue it on. They'd glue it to your sideburns. And then at night when they took it off, they'd just clip it and yank it, you know. Tears.
And then they took us to makeup. And of course, the women didn't have too much makeup on, you know, just a little lipstick. And I was used to putting on heavy lipstick. I went with Ann Leslie. I met her on the plane, on the train, excuse me. And so I said, oh, this lipstick is nothing. Better put it on darker. And when we were rehearsing, they said, get that stuff off your lips and put this light stuff on. It was like nothing, you know, just like natural. And I said, no. Better put on that dark stuff and they better notice us.
The Little People spent 4 weeks in tests, fittings, music and dance rehearsals. Even though the majority of their lines and songs would be dubbed in by professional singers, they still had to learn to lip sync their entire sequence. Their special sound recordings were prepared by arranger Ken Darby and Metro's ace sound engineer Douglas Shearer. Finally, in mid-December 1938, the Munchkins were escorted to MGM Soundstage 27.
Oh, it was just so fantastic. It was like something you never saw before in your life, and something you'll never see anything like it, because they did it from scratch and they really didn't know what they were doing. But like a cowboy dance director said, one leaf cost $125 at that time. Of course, today you can get it for nothing, but it was breathtaking.
It was something. It was awesome, I'll tell you. Like nothing I've ever seen before.
I thought it was immense.
Oh, it was fantastic. It was so beautiful. I couldn't believe my eyes, and I thought, gee, I'm going to be a part of this. It was great.
Oh, it was amazing. I couldn't believe, you know, the false flowers and all the rest of it. It was just, it was something. You know, here they were, and just big fields of it, you know. And then that yellow brick road, which diminished into a backdrop, you know. It looked like it went on forever, but it was only, you know, like the sound stage.
Well, to put it mildly, it blew your mind, because coming as a farm boy from Wisconsin to see all this color and this beauty was just, well, it was out of this world.
Big and monstrous. I said, my goodness, boy, they're spending plenty of money. Holy Toledo. I looked and looked. I said, look at the houses for the Munchkins and a beautiful bridge in the water, and the water was blue, and the flowers were something else. In fact, that's the first movie, well, that's the only movie I ever worked in where they had 10 green men. You know what a green man is. They take care of the flowers and the trees and the pots and all that stuff. And there were so many people behind the camera, I couldn't believe it. I said, seems like everybody had 4 assistants.
There is a beautiful duck pond in the opening scene, and of course in the final picture it just shows blue water with little ripples on it. Well, originally, naturally, a pond only shows blue if it can reflect the sky. Well, obviously there was no sky to reflect, so they put in a bottle of bluing in this water. Well, along with the bottle of bluing, of course, they had about a dozen little ducklings in there that turned blue. So they had to not only remove the ducklings, but drain the pond and then dry it out and paint the bottom of the pond blue in order to make it look blue. And then they had someone off camera with a paddle going like this to make ripples on the water. So in the final picture, it just shows those nice little ripples on the water.
In addition to their other Munchkin roles, Margaret Pellegrini and Carl Slover doubled as sleepyheads in this oversized Oz nest.
They just picked me out and told me where to go. And I remember up in the nest, it was pink satin. Oh, it was beautiful, the whole big nest. And then in this big nest was little eggs. And like I said, they were all pink satin and they were lined and everything. And then we had little tiny, pink nightgowns on, and we had little bonnets, and it had the little white lace around it. And I was just, looking at the movie. I was the second one in the back. And when they said, wake up, you sleepyhead, rub your eyes, get out of bed, well, then I raised up and we start rubbing our eyes like that. Well, they told us different ones when to come out, see? And sometimes you couldn't see the cue, and some of us would miss it, you know, because it was kind of hard. They had the light so strong that it just about blinds you, you know. But anyway, eventually they moved it around where they had some kind of a light or something. When they do that, you come up, you know. So that was our cue.
Mr. Brown was the chief electrician. So whenever Victor Fleming said, cut, immediately Mr. Brown would say, save your arcs, the big arc lamps, and all the Munchkins would say, save your arches, and we'd squat on whatever yellow brick we happen to be, because that's where we start the action again. And of course, this is something many people couldn't realize. We had 150 36-inch arc lamps hanging from the ceiling to make the simulated sunlight. So it was quite warm. And of course, these arc lamps apparently were quite expensive, because this picture used more electricity than any movie had ever been used before, because they had two of these huge electric generators, emergency generators, outside this particular studio to produce the electricity for this set.
People don't realize, and maybe it hasn't been said, but you know, that was that Technicolor then was 3 film. The camera was 3 film, and the lights around the set were big arcs, you know, and they created so much heat that, boy, you weren't under them very long before you were, you know, the degree would go up like 100 degrees in there, you know, especially on a hot day.
Whenever they turned on the lights, when ready for the day's shooting, they had a technician go around with a light meter, or a meter of some type, in other words, checking the intensity of the light on each thatched roof, on each plastic flower, to see if there was a hot spot. And every time I found a hot spot, he'd look up, he said, fan out that light, fan out that light, so in other words, to lessen the intensity on that particular spot.
Over the years, the little people of Oz have had to endure a whole lot of mostly unfounded rumors about wild Munchkin behavior during the making of the film. Probably less than a dozen of the 124 midgets caused any problems. But the cast members who were then in, or just barely out of their teens, do remember some of the activities of the adult midgets that led to the wildly blown out of proportion legend of today.
There was 2 or 3, you know, which is probably in every group, that they were fighting and causing trouble, but I never did ever hear much about it.
It's one thing I hated about that picture. Getting up at 6 in the morning, not getting home till about 7:30, and this was 6 days a week. This was before the 5-day a week, and it was tough. That's why the stories about the Wizard of Oz, 98% of them are false, you know, about the wild midgets, you know, in Culver City Hotel. Impossible. Well, maybe 1 or 2 guys, a guy named Kelly, and they used to drink a lot, you know, so. Kelly and his wife, they used to fight all the time.
One morning, it was on a Sunday morning, I never will forget, I was sitting in the room and at the desk, and I'm writing out postcards and Christmas cards and whatever. And a little knock come on the door, and I get up and I go answer the door. And here he stands with a knife. And he backed me in, and I says, I'll see you in a minute. I'm going outside. You want to talk to Jesse? And he said, no, you're not. You stay right here. Well, I was scared to death, being my age, you know, and so forth. So I went back in, and I sat down at the desk, and I start crying. I had tears just streaming down my face. And Jesse says, Charlie, what's the matter with you? He said, you're scaring that child to death. Well, she was a very religious little person, and she talked to him. I'm sitting there, I'm not saying a word, and she started talking to him, and finally he left. And after he left, well, Monday morning when we went to work, well, Jessie went in and she told Singer about it. And they called him in on the carpet, and they told him, they said, if this happens again, you're going to be expelled, and you're not going to be in the movie. And Jessie and I, they decided that we shouldn't stay there in the Culver City Hotel. So they moved us to a place in Hollywood, right off of Hollywood and Vine, and it was called the Vine Manor Hotel. And there was 2 twin boys there, the Kaufman twins, and they had just opened up this brand new hotel, and they put us upstairs in a corner, and of course they had been looking for us, you know, this fella, little Charlie. And nobody was to tell, nobody knew where we were or anything. Well, it was a little bit inconvenience because we had to get up at 5 o'clock every morning. We had to drive from Hollywood all the way to Culver City to MGM Studio.
Charlie Kelly, distraught over the estrangement from his wife Jessie, was perhaps the most rambunctious of the little people.
The second day when we got into the studio, he looked like a cowboy with a holster with 2 guns, one on each side, see? And the director called my boss over. He says, did you know that he's carrying 2 guns? My boss started laughing. He says, I don't think those are real guns. He says, those are probably toy guns. He says, they don't look like toy guns to me. Those look like real guns. So Mr. Singer got him on the side. He said, say, those guns you got in there, are they real? You're darn right they're real, he says. That's to protect my wife, so nobody messes with it. Well, he says, you take those guns, take them home right now. I don't want those in the studio. Or either if you can't keep them home, then you stay away. So he took them home, and that was it.
There was trouble. We went for breakfast that one morning, and naturally, you know, they had the buffet style, and we had to file in line and go through and get our food. And we went in that morning and got in line, and Charlie, I guess, was waiting on the sideline. And when Jessie and I came in, and we started to file in line to get our food, well, he came up and grabbed her by the back of the head and threw her on the ground. And well, some of the other little ones had to, you know, pull him off and everything because I guess he was just jealous. But we did have trouble in the restaurant that one time, and then, of course, in our room that one time. And that was enough for me.
I don't know if this is true, but 2 of the little guys that were the nippers, the little boozers, they started getting a rumor that so-and-so, your roommate, is drinking your booze at night, and I guess it almost created a fight, you know.
Ike and Mike write them too.
Mike and I, they'd get drunk and make a lot of noise, you know, and fight. And Charlie Ludwig, he was quite elderly, and he wanted to go to bed. He was tired, see? So because he was tired, so they got mad at him and tried to get him drunk, and he didn't want to drink. And so they took him And they had him partly drinking, you know, but he tried not to drink too much. Anyway, when he went to the lavatory, he lost his balance, fell head first in the toilet bowl, you know. And so all of a sudden he started, help, 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 you know. And Mr. Singer was in one room, and one of the other midgets in the other room, and Mr. Singer come out in his nightshirt. You know, those years, men used to wear nightshirts. He come out, and the other midget come out, is Johnny Pizzo. He came out, he says, Mr. Singer says, what in the heck is all that noise? Have you been drinking? He says, no, I just came out of my room. He says, I'm wondering myself what it is. He says, I don't know, I think it's coming from the lavatories. So they both went in there, and here poor Charlie Ludwig, his head first on, and they got him out. The poor guy was black and blue. So Mr. Singer says, I'm going to take him over to the house and keep him with us for a while until I get those drunks straightened out in there. And what Charlie Kelly did one night, he drug his wife in the lobby by her hair from one end of the place to the other. And that's when the owner of the hotel called up the house, because Mr. Singer was staying with us at the house, see, and told him, he says, you either come over here and straighten these people out, or they'll have to move, one or the other.
Nobody had too much to drink because we didn't drink in those days. You had to start early and you had to leave late, and a lot of us did overtime. The rumors that really used to upset me was that there was troubles on the set. At no time was there any difficulty that Victor Fleming or anybody had on the set with any of the little people, as you would say, that might have been a result of previous night's activities.
Not unnaturally, the Munchkins today are much happier to recall the stars they met and with whom they worked, their Oz director and producer, and the joys and idiosyncrasies of movie making in the golden age of Hollywood.
We made a fun trip out of it. Got to the set, and it was almost like play. It wasn't work at all. We enjoyed it immensely.
You know, I worked many times after at MGM, and it always amazed me because it was like night and day. It was a city there. You could go there, you know, and then they had 2 other big lots, you know, at that time. So they were really big. And of course we'd see Gable, and we'd see all the big ones, you know, Walter Pigeon.
Many, many of the major MGM stars came in, some just for themselves to take a peek, but most of them brought their children in to view Munchkinland. So, of course, when the children came in, they all asked autographs of the little people, and in return, we would get autographs of the parents. And some of them said, well, gee, I'm sorry, I don't have any pictures with me, but my dressing room is over on such a lot. Come over and I'll give you an autographed picture. So a part of my memorabilia is autographed pictures of most of the MGM people at that time. I have personally autographed pictures from Jeanette MacDonald, Hedy Lamarr, Spencer Tracy, Nelson Eddy, Robert Montgomery, Robert Taylor. Going to have autographs, of course, of Bert Lahr and the Tin Man, and autographed picture of Olivia de Havilland, and, well, let's say a half a dozen others that I can't name offhand.
I know Clark Gable wasn't there because I was looking for him all the time. But I remember one time I had to go to the bathroom, and I, you know, went to the bathroom, and I come back. I said, Jim, because I knew we weren't in the next scene, you know, so I wanted to go in the stage, so I opened the big heavy doors, you know. They opened up, and there's this girl right in front of me. Oh, God. It was Hedy Lamarr. She was gorgeous, you know.
Mickey Rooney was there. He's making the Huckleberry Finn movie. And he'd always, when we'd get on the tram in the morning, you know, to ride down to our set, well, he'd be always on the tram, and he'd wave at us and tell us, hi, guys, you know, come over and see me. And We did. We'd get over and see him.
All the other stars that used to come in to see us, because a lot of them, they were fascinated because there was so many little people. And I remember, and then me being a small-town girl from Alabama, I was a little bashful, and see, a lot of the little people had been in show business before, and so they knew, you know, how to go up and ask for autographs and stuff like that, but I was a little backward. But then I learned. I start, you know, edging my way in. And I remember very much when we were rehearsing, Mickey Rooney was, you know, he liked Judy Garland. And he used to come on our set every day at lunchtime to see Judy. Well, I got Mickey's autograph, and then Norma Shearer, she used to come on with her children. And I got to take her 2 children up the stairs and around and showed them the nest, you know, the sleepyhead nest, and down and around and back over to her. And then I remember, and I got her autographed. And Eleanor Powell, Victor McLaglen, Lou Ayres, and I know a few others.
I met Myrna Loy and Norma Shearer. They both came in, and the director called me right over. He said, I want you to meet some people. And then he had me sing We're Off to See the Wizard to them, and they got a big kick out of it. And I met quite a lot of stars, and when we went outside of the studio, here comes a beautiful black car. Here was Clark Gable, and he coming over. And so he talked with us. He was a real nice fella.
One day we were going for lunch, and Dolly, the one that gave my name to the Thelma Weiss, the agent, and I said, Dolly, I've got to meet Clark Gable. I said, where is he? So we were going for lunch, and we're walking down the, you know, going to the commissary, you know, for lunch, and there was a fellow over there with this blue pinstripe suit on. I said, Dolly, there's Clark Gable, and I got all excited. She said, that's not Clark. She said, that's his double. Well, she took me over and introduced me. So I told him, I said, it's nice to meet you, but I'd love to meet Clark Gable. And he says, well, I'll see if I can, but I never did get to meet him. And I didn't even get his autograph. He promised me one and was going to send it to me, but that's the story of my life.
Victor Fleming was one of 5 directors assigned to The Wizard of Oz by producer Mervyn LeRoy, and is responsible for all but the Kansas sequences of the picture. He, LeRoy, and the Munchkin co-stars are clearly remembered by the little people.
Mervyn LeRoy and Victor Fleming were real nice to work for. I mean, you know, they didn't seem to hassle us in any way at all. If we'd make a mistake or something, they'd just cut and then redo it, you know.
And I remember Victor Fleming, he was up on the, when they were filming, he'd get up on that seat, you know, and they would, you know, hoist that, the camera up, you know, and they were going like that.
Victor Fleming, I found out later, had the reputation of so-called being a rather stern, tough guy. But to handling the Munchkins, he was most understanding, most congenial, and he would say, well, let's do it this way. There was never an order to say, well, this or do that. In other words, let's try it this way, let's try it that way. So I would say he was very, very understanding and very compassionate with the little people.
And Mervyn LeRoy was very, very nice. He had the trap door where Margaret Hamilton fell through, and all he kept saying is, don't come near this trap door, don't come near this trap door, and down he went.
LeRoy wasn't down there much. He'd walk in on, with his big cigar and look us over, and I guess he was pleased with what he was getting, though, you know.
When the movie was just about finished, they picked out 10 little people for the last, you know, like a touch-up shots or whatever, and I was lucky to be one of them. And they had us in that, in the bushes, I call it, and where we'd pop up, you know, and they'd say, come out. And I remember very well, I was down on them when they started telling us to come up, and it was lucky they got the shot. And right after that, I got a nosebleed. And Mervyn LeRoy came over and picked me up and picked me out of the bushes, and he took me over to first aid. Billy Burke used to have her dressing room on the side, and she would used to take her chair, and she'd bring the chair out and sit down in the chair, and I used to go by there and, you know, just stand and talk to her for a few minutes. And she gave me a picture of her, 8x10 picture, and signed it, you know, to Margaret Billy Burke, or she just signed it Billy Burke, I can't remember. I still have it.
I remember Billy Burke coming on the set, in other words, fully made up and very, shall we say, dignified, but because I was not in that action, I was not close to her, and she did not mingle with the little people such as the other people did.
The Good Witch, I got the biggest kick out of her when I was next to the director, only about like you and I are here, see? And he told me, stay right there, because there's some people coming in you might want to meet. So here she came in, like an old woman with a cane like that, you know, walking. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I bet that woman must be 100 years old or close to it. She had a big black hat on, all in black. She had high-top boots, black high-top boots, black gloves, black cane, black overcoat. The dress was black. I thought, my gosh, I wonder who she is. I wonder if the people in the studio know her, you know. And right then the director called her by name. He says, straighten out. What's the matter with you? You can walk better than that. Straighten up. I don't like to see you walking like that, like you're hunchback. And so then she looked at him. She says, she dropped her cane, she dropped her overcoat, took her hat off, took her gloves off. He says, just what do you think you're doing? She says, well, you know, if I have to work with all these fine little people, they might as well learn how I am in real life. So how does that grab you, she says. And he kind of laughed. Well, he says, that is really something. When I saw her all dressed up, I thought to myself, well, my goodness, makeup and all of that. She looked like she was about 35 years old. She looked beautiful. I mean beautiful. I thought what they can do with costume and makeup and everything.
I just admired her all the time, looked at how beautiful she was, and then I found out how old she was. I says, boy, she really is beautiful, you know.
Margaret Hamlin, who was the Wicked Witch, was the sweetest of the whole bunch, you know. She was just a great person. And she would visit with us and talk to us.
Whenever she was not in makeup, she mingled with the Munchkins and made it a specific point to distribute a personally autographed picture to each individual Munchkin on the set.
I spoke to her a few times, and I spoke to her after the movie. I think she worked in remember that series, Hazel? I think she had a cameo part in that, or she was a guest star, and I was standing in for one of the kids. And I went over and talked to her, and so we had quite a chat about the wizard.
The most serious accident that occurred during the making of Oz involved Margaret Hamilton and happened right on the Munchkinland set.
They had been shooting this scene and apparently had a almost perfect take of this whole sequence. And then they said, well, I heard Victor Fleming say, well, let's take one more try at it.
Well, I seen her come up and down a few times, and I was amazed. Isn't that terrific? I didn't even know about trapdoors then. I was so naive, you know. Then one time she didn't come up. I says, uh-oh, what happened to her? So that's the time she got hurt.
You know, she had this little elevator that she had to step on, you know, to go down. And that was right where the ruby slippers are, where the house fell. Well, I had to fall when she turned around and that fire all came up. Right over in the far corner, you can just barely see the tip end of my dress. That's where I had to fall. And it was hot. When that fire came up like that, I mean, you could feel it. And when she went down, well, after she went down, we heard that she got burned.
If it wasn't exact something was going to happen, either fire would go too soon or would well, you know what I mean. So evidently they weren't in sync. At one time they made a mistake, and that's why she got burned. But fortunately it wasn't as bad as everybody thought.
The Wizard of Oz was, of course, specifically designed to showcase the incomparable talent of Judy Garland. Even at 16, she made an indelible impression on the Munchkins.
All the little people thought very highly of Judy because basically knowing that she had been in the theater, had done work for so many years, had been a singer, she treated all the little people as troopers in, shall we say, in the same category as herself. In other words, there was never any feeling of being, shall we say, above or below. We were all part of the gang. And whenever there was a break in the action, she would chat with us very amiably.
Oh, she was she was practically a typical teenager, you know. When she first came on and said, "Hi guys, hi kids," you know, she was excited to see us as much as we were excited to see her. She couldn't get over seeing 124 of us all at one time.
But you know, we did not see much of her because she had to be in school. You know, there's 4 hours of schooling, and so it was, whenever she was out of school, she was on the set, but then as soon as they finished, she was back at school. And that's the way it is with all studio children actors and actresses.
Time is money, so as soon as she was through with the scene, they grabbed her right away and shoved her next door to a school, you know, because in those days, well, and still now, they work 4 hours, I think, and then they have 3 hours of schooling and an hour of recreation, so they couldn't afford to have her messing around with it because she was so valuable.
They had not a nursemaid, a security guard for her. She would come in with a security guard into the studio, see? And the director told us later on, he says, all the young people that's 15, 16 years old that we use in pictures, men or women or girls and boys, we have security guards for them. The reason for that, so when they get outside, there are no smart alecks that try to take over and hurt them or do anything bad to them. This way, a security guard takes Judy Garland home and or into school, and then when she gets out of school, the security guard will take her home, and then before she goes home, but when she leaves here with Judy Garland, she'll always ask the director, what time do you want Judy Garland to be here in the morning? And she'd bring it back.
Some of the guys try to make a date with her, you know, and some of the older guys. I didn't talk to her too much. I did a little bit, because she was on the set a lot. But most of the little midget ladies talked to her, and they would discuss women things, I don't know.
And then that Christmas, they gave Judy her own private dressing room on wheels. And we were part of that, because that morning when she came to work and we were at work, they had this dressing room kind of over in the corner, kind of veiled over, like they had this big red ribbon. And when she came on the set, they took her over and they, you know, hollered, "Merry Christmas," and they gave her the scissors and she cut the ribbon. And then she invited all of us to go and line up, and we went right through and we looked at her dressing room. And she gave each and every one of us an 8x10 photo of her. Each one was personalized to us. Mine says, "From your pal, Judy," to Margaret, "From your pal, Judy."
My most treasured possession is a personally autographed picture from Judy in which she says, "To Meinhardt, a perfect coroner and person too, love from Judy."
It took just over 2 weeks to actually film the Munchkinland sequence. By this point, the little people had settled in, coping with the logistics of life on the lot and the idea of spending the holidays away from home, enjoying the chance to peek at the other Oz sets, and wondering at the opportunity of working with so many people their own size, from 2 feet 3 inches tall to 4 feet 8 inches tall.
I didn't know we had so many little people around. Walked in and you just, you know, it's like you never saw anything before in your life. You just walk in and you stop and you look and there's the other person facing you. You're not looking up at all. Oh, it's a thrill. a thrill.
It was a fascinating thing, you know, to see all these little people, and you know, they were so well formed and everything. And I had never seen little people as such, you know, not in school or on the streets. You know, I sort of had been isolated from them, really. So, and the gals were so beautiful, those little gals, and, you know.
My eyes were going all over the place. See, I wonder if he plays baseball. Or does he like girls? I wonder if with this one, I was wondering who and who. I wonder if he likes the same things I do, or, you know, curious, you know, because, you know, all these years without ever seeing a little person is different, you know.
You can't believe how, well, what a thrill it was to see everybody, you know. There's a lot of them I knew, a lot of them I didn't know. See, I'd worked with some of them in Dallas, Texas, and in Cleveland, Ohio.
There were 10 or 12 children in the background. They needed that many more to fill up, and they couldn't find enough munchkins to fill up in there, so they had children to fill in the blank spots in the back.
And of course, with their size, they did look like munchkins back there too. So
It was about an 9-hour day. But some of the dancing girls, they had little kids working with them, you know, because they didn't have enough small people. And so when they were working, they'd have to take off 10 minutes every hour because there was a law in California about the kids working over, you know.
I saw the poppy field. Oh, that was beautiful. That poppy field set was just absolutely beautiful.
We were busy on the Munchkinland set, so we really didn't get to go out and see a lot. But I did get to see the poppy fields. I happened to be going down some way, and I opened the door, and there I seen this big, huge room, and like I said, it's like a warehouse, and it was all poppy fields. And then I went down, and I just saw the outside of the castle. You know where Toto jumped off of that ledge and ran after them? I just got to see just that one part.
Here we get into the studio where they had these trees with the apples, see? So I looked at those things, you know, and I said to my roommate, I said, you know, that darn tree made a face at me. Oh, he says, you're crazy, there's no such a thing as that. Well, I says, I don't care. So it wasn't too long, he says, I apologize. He says, that tree made a face at me too. By that time, the prop man started busting out laughing. He says, let me tell you folks, I should have told you right away. Those are rubber trees. There's a man in each tree. And they're making the different faces and moving the hand, the branches, the hands look like branches. And they're going to throw apples at Judy Garland or either the bear, whatever is going to be there, you know. So naturally we all kind of laughed, but he got a big bang out of it.
well, I went into the Flying Monkeys, and that was, to me, I would have liked to have done that because they were on wires coming down. I thought, gee, that'd be real keen, you know. But no, I didn't do that.
This was the set directly across the street from Munchkinland, where the monkeys came and picked Judy up to fly away with her. And here was a big pile of straw. They pulled out of the straw man. When we said, well, there's a little me laying there, a little me laying there. And of course, if anybody saw that picture closely, it was not Judy they picked, it was her double. Because we knew her double, because the double had been working with us prior to the time that Judy would come on the set. And of course, what amazed me is looking up in the sky, and here were these thousands of monkeys up there, all little puppets up there, with strings attached, running over to pulleys on the side. So this is what, when people see that picture, they see these thousands of monkeys flying in the sky. They were all little puppets hanging from the ceiling.
Well, we had a restaurant right off the set, and Mr. Singer said that's where we to eat. Well, the first day we went there, we said, ha, Tomei Marie's, we're not eating there again. It was terrible. But the commissary was nice.
I ate lunch at the commissary. I do not believe all of them ate at the same place, but I ate at the commissary, and I do remember eating large combination salads that was At that time, I think, paid 35 cents for a large bowl this size. Of course, meat and everything was in there.
We went to the commissary sometimes during our break, you know, when the soldiers weren't marching. We'd go down to the commissary, and Judy Garland was there 2 or 3 times. And then the cafe where we had our regular meals, it was a couple of blocks from where we lived. They gave us a card. We'd go over there and eat whatever we wanted, and they'd punch our card.
I do remember, too, that they did have a table set up on the set where Munchkinland was. And we used to go over to this table, and we would get our sandwiches or our lunch or whatever we had. But, and then I remember we went into the commissary and we went through the line for the buffet, and we used to come around. That's where I met Lou Ayres, because he was sitting at the table and I'm carrying my tray, you know, going to the table. Well, we all had this one restaurant that we ate in, and we had our Thanksgiving dinner there. And then after that, well, these little people, Dolly and Henry, they took me out for an afternoon sightseeing tour that afternoon. And then that night, I was asked to go to the movies, to go to a show. Meinhardt, The Corner. I went out to this theater, and he come to the hotel to pick me up, and he brought me a 1-pound box of Whitman's candy. I never will forget that. And we went to the show, and that was it. That was how I spent Thanksgiving. Christmas, I had Christmas at the Vine Manor Hotel at this little, you know, motel that we stayed in. And Jesse and I put a little tree up in our room, and my family sent me a package. And I never will forget, my dad sent me a little locket, and he had MVW on it. And I thought, oh my, and it was like one of my first pieces of jewelry. In fact, I still have it. And my grandma, or step-grandma, whatever, she sent me like a little sachet basket that had been crocheted, and it had this, you know, smelling and all. You put it in with your clothes and everything, which I still have that. And, it was a real nice Christmas. And then New Year's, Jessie and I, she bought this little car, and we went down to Tijuana. And we went down about 4 o'clock in the morning, and we got to the border, and it wasn't opened. So then we had to stay parked in the car. And then when they opened the border, well, then we went across, and we spent a few hours there, and then we went back home that day, and that's how we spent New Year's.
I bought a tree, and we decorated the tree, and so we had Christmas. That was the thing to do, was have a Christmas tree.
I was wishing I was home at the time, but I said, well, it's a job, you know. I'm lucky to have a job, you know, and lucky to be in movies. I never made a picture in my life, you know. When I was a kid, I always used to say, boy, I'd love to go to California and be in pictures, you know. So that was, I thought of that every time there was a hardship, you know. I says, I'm lucky I'm here, and I'm lucky I'm meeting all these little people.
Let's say from emotional wise, I can't say that it bothered me, because to me, the excitement or the emotion of the whole thing was what carried me over, so that I wasn't downcast or depressed or anything of that nature. In fact, I don't believe it bothered me.
Most Munchkin memories of Oz are positive ones, but their recollections of their salaries can at best be termed bittersweet. Especially in retrospect, it seems they were being paid commensurate with their size.
We were all, the one that worked for Signer, we were all supposed to get $100 a week. But Signer swallowed $50 from all of us, and all we got was $50 a week. He swallowed the rest. Besides, he was getting money for the other midgets that he had hired for the show.
What was left after Leo Singer and everybody else took the cake, we got $50 a week. Some didn't get that much.
Yeah, I got $28, something like that for the movie a week, plus our board and room, you know.
But at that time, there was very little taken out, because you didn't have Social Security, you didn't have a lot of other things to take out of your check, so you received most of that check.
I think I got $75 a week. I was one of the highest paid.
So that was it. No residuals, you know.
And Toto got more money than we did. He made $125 a week.
But even with that, the little people prefer to recall their personal reactions to the experiences they had in making the film.
K.O. Erickson, he was behind me. He was supposed to be the first trumpeter to come out. And there was Major Mike was in the back, and I was in the center, see? Well, the Melvin Leroy gave the cue for us to come out with the trumpeters, you know. And K.O. wouldn't move. So I gave him a little shove. I says, he wants us out, so get going. Don't push, he says, you know. So that 3 different times he did that. The director says, now we can't have that. He says, when I give you the cue to come out, I expect you to come out right now and not any different, not any stalling. We can't stall this picture anymore. It's been stalled long enough. So he said, what can we do to change this? I says, well, if you want to put me in the front, I'll guarantee you we'll come out as soon as you give me the cue. So he says, okay, change. So then I was the first one, see? So when he gave me the cue to come out, I came out, and what the heck is his name, K.O., he wouldn't move, so the other one gave him a shove. Don't shove me, he said. And so finally they came out. But anyway, you couldn't tell it in the picture that he gave him a shove, see? Anyway, he came out, but he was mad as a wet hen because he pushed.
When I was making the picture, I just thought to myself, I better be in front so that my family could see me. And I'm through the whole thing.
When Judy Garland was leaving the Munchkinland sequence, you know, when she paraded out, you know, we were singing the song, Follow the Yellow Brick Road or whatever it was, I forgot. And we said, goodbye, goodbye. And then there was a guy way in the end of the dirty, filthy stage with a handkerchief. Look at the handkerchief and say goodbye, goodbye, you know. But that was all plate. They put the plate in afterwards.
It was that on the Wizard of Oz set on my birthday, which was November 24th, and but nobody made a thing of it because I didn't tell anybody. I didn't want to have them all singing happy birthday.
But we done a lot of marching, just like in the Army. It was just, and sometimes our legs were so tired and sore for not being used to it, you know.
And it was very cold. It was a bad winter that time, I'm quite sure. A lot of rain, a lot of cold, and me, I just come from Boston. I says, oh boy, it's going to be nice and warm, you know. Everything was the opposite of what I thought.
When they dressed me up like a woman, there were 4 of us, and there were more major men than women, and dressed me up like a woman, and we are supposed to look, see where the Wicked Witch had vanished. And I looked in the mirror, I thought, oh my God, is that me? I didn't even recognize my own self.
I'm going to tell you something. The first time I ever had anybody help me go potty. We had a woman standing there because our costumes were so big, you know, I mean, they were so full, the petticoats and everything, that it was kind of hard to, you know, get them up, you know, to get help. So this lady was always there, and we had to ride this little tram, you know, to go into the restroom.
When it was over, I wished that I could stay a little bit longer because I was enjoying myself. And no, it was back home and back to school.
By New Year's Eve 1938, the Munchkins had finished their portion of The Wizard of Oz. Some of them stayed on in films, some of them returned to the stage, some of them simply went back home to the lives they'd known before Hollywood. They'd have no idea what they'd helped to create until the film premiered to rapturous reviews and record-breaking attendance figures in August 1939.
We never thought it would be like it is today, but we thought it was great, you know. Some of the little women cried.
Even then, I thought it was fantastic because I could see myself on the screen. And I was in hopes that it would turn out to be the movie that it is today.
It was in the Treasure Island World's Fair when they premiered the movie. It was in San Francisco, and Mr. Singer picked, this little fella called Carl. I call him Kachi, but his name is Carl. And him and I believe there was another one. And they picked us to go to this theater, and I don't remember if it was the Fox Theater or whatever. And we stayed out in the lobby, and they put a card table up for us, and we autographed as they went in. And after the movie. And then when the movie came on, we got to go in and sit down. And I was all eyes. I was looking, and then when I saw myself, I got so excited.
We had made an arrangement with Oscar Mayer and the theater companies so that I traveled with the picture for its initial run through Illinois, Wisconsin, and part of Indiana. So that I traveled with the picture for 6 months on its initial run. With the Wienermobile parked out in front of the theater, I would go on stage in my Oscar Mayer costume as little Oscar and give a little promo, a little introduction, watch for this, and pay a particular attention to that, maybe a 3 to 5 minute introduction to the picture. And then as soon as the picture was over, of course, during the course of the picture, I would be out in the lobby, and you would see some mothers come out with children screaming in their arms whenever the Wicked Witch appeared or when the Winking Monkeys appeared. And then when the picture was finally over and everybody streaming out of the theater, I was passing out weenie samples in the lobby.
I was at the premiere of the movie The Wizard of Oz, and I didn't see the movie because I was working outside. They hired about 3 or 4 of us as munchkins to ballyhoo the picture, and that was quite a thing. Of course, I was dressed as the mayor then, because I don't know what happened to my wardrobe. Well, anyways, I was the mayor. And it was exciting because I saved the program, one program. I should have grabbed 5 or 6, you know, because I sold it to Chris's auction house, and they gave me $3,000 for that program. I was thrilled, and they sold my wardrobe, incidentally. My wardrobe, 2 pieces, the shirt and the pants, and $17,500. Can you imagine that? To a doctor in San Francisco. And he called me up and he says, could I take a picture of you with your old wardrobe? He says, sure. I said, but I'm not going up there. You come down here. So he came down to my house, and we had pictures taken of the old wardrobe, and I grew so much, you know, this way and that way, a little fat balloon.
The legend of the Wizard of Oz, as we know it now, didn't really begin to take hold until the film became an almost annual television event beginning in 1956. Even then, with most of the Oz stars alive and active, fame for the Munchkins was pretty much a local thing, limited to family and friends in their hometowns. But by the late 1970s and 1980s, that generation who'd loved Oz on TV had begun to have children of its own, and the film became a treasured national icon. Oz events and festivals began to spring up, and the Munchkins began their own series of personal appearances.
There I am, all set. How you doing?
Glad to be here. Glad to be here. 70 years old today. Happy birthday.
Oh, you're the lion.
She's lifting me.
Great. Oh, and look at the little lullaby, and look at the tin man.
Are you really Munchkin?
Yes, I'm really a Munchkin. And I have met so many people and so many fans and so many wonderful, wonderful people. And I never realized that there were so many fans, people that loved The Wizard of Oz. What is your name? Ashley. I have a great-granddaughter named Ashley.
Everybody is so wonderful to us. I mean, we come back here for 10 years. They've been having it for 12 years. We've been here, wife and I have been here for 10 years. And people say, hi, Louis, how are you? And you just, like you're just everyday buddy, you know. And
the people where we do go on these festivals have just been great with us and, you know, with my wife. And it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun to get back to see them and see all the little munchkins, and we do have a good time.
because that's about the only time I get a chance to really talk to some of my friends that I've met and some of them that I've worked with. You know, it's really a relief to get away from home for a change and enjoy the different scenery, you know, and meet different people.
The people, they really love you, and I'm overwhelmed, you know, like people, they just love you, you know. Oh, you're the lollipop guy. Oh, yes, yes, could I have your autograph? Could I have a picture? Could I have this? And so it was recognition.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
The thing is, with senior citizens, it's nostalgia. With the youngsters, it's adulation. Oh, I saw a movie star. In other words, that sparkle in their eye makes you feel, well, you've accomplished, you've given somebody a bit of joy.
I don't feel that I'm a celebrity. You know, after all, we are not stars, none of us. But because the people make us that way, it's wonderful. You feel good. You feel good that the people love you, that the people enjoy you. It's great.
And I want to thank the entire public because they made us.
As a book, a motion picture, and by now a part of American popular and cultural folklore, The Wizard of Oz has achieved with the public a fame, familiarity, and love unique to any other entertainment. And if the Munchkins themselves are any indication, it retains a similarly special meaning for those who participated in its creation.
The magic of the movie is it's the great American fairy tale. They can't even improve on it. They can't improve on the color, the makeup, the wardrobe, the choreography, special effects. I'm telling you, it's that's what makes you think of what a great picture it was. 55 years later, they can't even touch it.
And I love it, and there'll never be another movie like it. And when I talk to the kids, I go out, you know, make appearances, and I always tell the kids, there's no place like home. And that's usually how I close the story, you know. And I just think it's wonderful. And I am so happy and I'm so honored to have a part of it.
And oh, what happened then was rich. The house began to pitch, and the kitchen took a hitch. It landed on a wicked witch in the middle of a ditch. So not a healthy situation for the wicked witch. The house began to pitch.
Wizard of Oz has to rank right up at the top. I mean, of all the things I've ever done, I think that stands out in my mind more than any other show.
I am very proud of it and think that it's the best.
Yeah, I'm very, very proud to be in it.
One thing I get in almost every letter I receive, you must be very proud of having participated in such a brilliant movie. Almost every letter I get will have that phrase in it. And the only time I really can really makes an impression on me is when the youngsters say to me, oh, you were in the movie Wizard of Oz? Oh, that's a wonderful, you know, they really go gaga.
As coroner, I must suffer. I thoroughly examined her, and she's not only merely dead, she's really most sincerely dead.
Oh, it's the greatest thing. I only had about, I don't know, 60 seconds on the screen, but I told them I was Buster Brown, Little Oscar, Andy Williams. They said, then when I tell them I was in the Wizard of Oz, you were in the Wizard of Oz? Forget everything else. That's it. So that's how important this picture is. It dwarfs everything I've ever done. And even though it's the first thing I've done.
We represent the Lollipop Guild, the Lollipop Guild, the Lollipop Guild, and in the name of the Lollipop Guild, we wish to welcome you to Munchkin Land.
Oh, I think making this picture was one of the greatest things ever done, because it makes us people, the small people, the little people, make us feel great, because we are noticed, because usually people don't notice you. And when I was little, when I was in the 8th grade, I was still smaller than the girl in the 1st grade. I was always the smallest one, and now you're noticed. I wasn't then, but today I'm noticed. Great. Good feeling.
It's regrettable, of course, that today's children can't meet in person the real Dorothy, the real Scarecrow or Wicked Witch, and that only a few of the Munchkins themselves are able to participate in the celebrity they've all earned. But much as they first welcomed Dorothy to Oz, the little people today continue to be the perfect hosts and hostesses for children, especially those lucky enough to meet in person these genuine citizens of that magical, unforgettable kingdom. Despite the passage of years, their lack of physical stature keeps them just about the way children would expect them to be. And as generation after generation continues to travel over the rainbow, there could be no better guides for our little people than the little people, the Munchkins of Oz.
Follow the yellow brick road? Follow the yellow brick road.
Follow the yellow brick road.
Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road.